All right, so for today, it's our 12:30 Thursday class. We have Zeke and Angie joining us, so I'm going to leave it. I do like to leave as much as I can. I leave both screens up so that they can see in the recording what they see on my screen, and that way if Angie's really flexible at doing something or Zeke's really good at doing something, everyone can hopefully see it, because some of these moves we're doing today that involve thoracic mobility and lower spine mobilization stuff, I don't always get as much range of motion. So it's cool when we have people on the video, because then you can kind of see what the different ranges of ability are and know what you can aim for. So we're focusing on back. It gets some hip flexor and some pec and chest stuff, but most of it is about the back mobility of your spine. So that's our focus today. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to start with going through a bit of a kind of a flow, I guess you'd call it if it was like in yoga or like a Ramwat class, but we're just doing basically back and forth between up dogs and down dogs. We do this a lot of times in our joint prep warm up because Angie and Greg know how important spinal stuff is. With everything. So we're going to just go back and forth for a few reps of the down dog stuff. So going down through here, if you want to go up like this, you can. I always start with child's pose a little bit so my hips get warmer, and then I come forward into a press up or up dog style move, or top of a cobra might be where some people need to be, like in a sphinx style pose with their elbows, whatever works for you, but alternate going back and forth and really hold for like a second or two at the end of each part so that you're really kind of letting yourself sink into it, breathe into it, push down into that position. And again, after you've done a couple, you can always bring the glutes up. You can pedal the legs a little. They do this type of stuff in yoga quite a bit, so some of you might be familiar, but it's just a good way to get that whole back side stretched through forward and back and playing around with it. So have fun with it. This is your mobility session. So playing around with those. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit of the lat stretched out, which is part of our back, those big back muscles. And so we're going to go into kind of that child's pose position. Sink down in for a few. Just let yourself really feel it. Let your arms kind of relax, head hang heavy. And then you're going to work your way walking towards one side. And when I walk towards that one side, I don't think about turning my whole body with it. I'm sitting forward as if I'm in a straight on child's pose. And then all I'm doing is kind of inching my hands over. And then I'm going to take the hand that's furthest over. So for me, if you guys are watching, this is my left. And I'm going to try and reach it long and towards the corner of the wall. So I'm basically reaching it that way. I'm really trying to walk it out that way and then stretch. So instead of trying to keep walking it over, I walk over till I feel it stop, and then I reach with it. So I really reach up over my head when I sink into that position. And you can even use this other hand to kind of help you sink in. That's fine, right? And then breathe into it. Hold for another 20 seconds here. You should really feel this along your lats, the side of your armpit. Maybe you feel it in your triceps, depending on how much upper body you've been doing. You might feel it down into the low back a little. Go ahead and bring it back to center carefully. Let's go reach out in front of us again, like normal child's pose. And then you're going to inch your arm over. Again, we're just going with the arm reach. We're not trying to take our whole body that way. And then we're going to stretch. So wherever it stops, this side for me stops a lot sooner. It doesn't get over as far. And then I reach out. And I feel this one almost none in my armpit, none in my traps or triceps. I feel it all at the very base of my lat, like right here. So that just tells me that that in particular is where I'm tighter on this side compared to where I felt the tension and pull on the other side connecting. Let's go and hold for another 20, 30 seconds here. Just taking the time to get some of the big and little muscles that are all along our spine supporting us all the time. Now as that little bit lets go for me, I'm starting to feel finally a little bit into the top of my armpit where the other part of my lat comes through. You also might see my hairless cat walking around randomly in frame, just so that you're not alarmed. It's not an alien. Go ahead and sit up out of it. We're going to come up into kind of what they would call in yoga, they call tabletop, right? So kind of in that high position. And then all we're going to do is we're going to start low in the bottom, just doing what kind of looks like a cat camel, but notice the difference, right? A big giant cat camel is all the way up here and all the way sway back to here. I want your upper from here up to just kind of be in a planked position, and I want you just rocking the pelvis. So we're just doing some pelvic rocks at the very bottom. It feels basically like you're just kind of like tucking your tail between your legs like a dog and then letting it go back to normal. So just playing around with that first, just pumping those lower discs in your lumbar spine, just little ones. Then go ahead and find that neutral position. After you've done that a few times, shoulders should still be nice and in that kind of planked position. Now we're going to do the upper part where we push up just through the shoulder. So I'm pushing up through the shoulder, sinking through the shoulder, and you'll notice nothing from here down is moving. So I'm not going into sway back. I'm just basically trying to spread my shoulder blades. Those of you that have done this a bunch in warm-ups and joint preps in class, it's just like a push-up plus, but without the full plank. We're just doing those scapular movements. Really thinking about it. I kind of do like a 1 or 2 second count at the top of each one. And then now find that neutral again. We're going to put it all together. So we're going to start with rolling the pelvis, starting in that low tuck, feeling that middle part of our back, and then finishing with the push-up through the shoulder. And then from there, I like to kind of rock forward, rock side to side, rock back, and then I sink back to the shoulder, back through the mid-back, one vertebrae at a time, all the way to my tail up, and then head up. And then again, I rock forward, side to side, and back. And then I'm going to do it again. So we're going to go through that 3 more full times. So 4 total times, tucking the tail between the leg first, like you're rolling one vertebrae at a time, then pushing the shoulders up, and then I rock around so I get some different types of stretch and position on the wrist tension. And then again, I sink the shoulder back down first, mid-back, rolling my way all the way to the tail, and then head up. And I'm going to do it again, back to neutral, rolling that low spine all the way up, rocking a bit. This should feel really nice for you, Zeke, being out in the weather, basically just doing kind of these nice slow spinal flows today. You won't sweat too much other than the fact that it's sunny out. It'll feel like a nice, like almost like the easiest little yoga type session you've ever done. It's just a lot of little stretching, not a lot of flow today. Should feel nice. I'm just finishing going back from my set number 3. Should start to feel it loosen up a little bit in the front of your chin and your neck. Should start to feel looser each time too. And don't forget, I rock at both ends of it. And then the last one for me, don't know where you're at, rolling all the way up and through, tucking the head. And then dropping back through the shoulders. All the way through. And now I can actually keep my mouth closed, which I had to open in order to get my head all the way up before. Just little things you might notice. Then go ahead and sit back on your ankles for a sec. Let's stretch out very nicely and gently. Just walk your hands, palms up. Just walk around and stretch out a little bit through the wrists that we were just planting on. Just whatever feels good to you. And then circle them up. That should be a pretty simple one. So this one I love. That whole little bit of range of motion one I love. And then right afterwards, if I were using this before a workout, just for people that like to get ideas of when to throw these in their daily life that watch this later, I'll then go through and do this type of thing before I then do a bunch of either hip mobility stuff, squat type mobility things, because then I know that my spinal tension has been loosened up and warmed up and ready, and that it's not that locking down, preventing my hips from moving or preventing my shoulders from being upright in a squat position or my hips from really opening, because it doesn't have that fascial tension that pulls on my back that then my body says, oh, we're getting tugged on, lock it down. and doesn't let me move. So that would be a good type of move, working through those kind of cat-cow style progressions, stretching the lats and all those. It's a good way to get global looseness through the spine so that when you go and do your bigger move mobility things for like hip and squat depth and shoulder opening, you know that you're truly loose and ready to go, so you're only really needing to work through tension that still lingers in those four corners of your body. So there's a good time to throw that stuff in. Back to mobility stuff. We're gonna go back down to this position. We give your wrists a little bit of a rest. We're gonna go back to that tabletop position. Hopefully you guys can see me good enough for purposes of doing mobility. We're gonna do bird dog styles, but we're gonna work our way through it. We're gonna start with just doing the lower body because we're gonna heat our core through a little bit so that when we go do some rotational things, it feels nice and stable and supported. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna just kick one leg back. Notice as I kick this one back, I'm not doing it in traditional arching style. I'm not balancing one leg. I'm just doing one. I'm trying to slide it as if you were looking at me and couldn't tell that I even moved my leg back. My hips didn't drop. I didn't turn open with it. I stayed level, and then I'm going to bring it back. It shouldn't feel like you're having to really sit back into the hip when you bring it back, or that you're arching yourself up to lift it. Your goal is to try and keep your core and your glutes and everything squeezed nice and tight on your shoulders level so you don't feel like you're tipping. Go ahead and do 10 for one side. I shouldn't feel like I'm sinking to one hip or the other. If you are, that's fine. Just put some mental mindset to fight that from happening. And as you work to fight the tip, even if you're not perfect at it yet, you're mentally strengthening your muscles and those abilities to hold that. And you can lift the leg as high as you want. Mine's not going all the way up because I have a wall behind me, so I'm just sliding. If you're newer to it and lifting it causes a lot of pelvic dumping where it tips, then don't lift it. Just slide like I am. Go ahead and switch sides. And again, put that extra mindset into it of just getting time. You'll notice I do a lot of stuff where we're down on the ground. I like us having to practice time in our mobility of being animalistic, down on the ground, moving around with our hands and knees and feet, because we don't do that all day. We sit upright in a chair, hunched over, and our hands are in the opposite position. So you'll probably be able to go through the second side a little faster because now your body's kind of warm, your core is warmed up to what you're doing. And then once you're done with those, we're gonna switch it to doing the arms, okay? So optional moves with this. This is when I try to introduce crawl patterns for people. Optional moves for this. One, what I'm gonna stick with, because I know that I struggle with shoulder mobility, but it affects my upper back mobility, is I'm just gonna reach and try really hard to reach, straighten my arm, and reach long and high. So I'm not just lifting to lift like this. I'm trying to really make almost as if it's a board from my arm all the way down my spine. One big, long process. If you're really good at that and you have super mobile arms, add a need for stability by coming up off your knees and then lifting and trying not to tip. So that's a way to challenge yourself. If you're like, wow, I'm like a dancer and I have beautiful mobility in my shoulders, this isn't hard. Like I said, come up onto the toes and try to do it while you're stabilizing in a low bear. So there's your options. Let's do 10 each side and really think about, are you craning your neck? Are you shrugging your shoulder? Are you tipping in order to reach? Are you bending your arm and elbow out to the side in order to get there because of lack of mobility, right? Looking at me straight on, you might notice, I can't see it, but I can feel that I instantly bend my arm and have to force straighten it to bring it all the way up. And I have to really work to not crane my neck to lift my shoulder. Now, if we watch the other side, it might look different to you guys on what I'm able to accomplish on this side. Everybody's a little different. I have to think to straighten my arm. I shake a lot more, but work through it. We'll go from the side so you can see again. And I'm trying not to dip my low back. I'm trying to keep it planked and level. So I'm keeping that rib cage tucked like we practice when we're doing overhead stuff, all of us together in class. I'm really trying not to let myself get mobility from my back instead of from my shoulders. The reason, again, we're doing all this is if we can get those four corners and the back to play together nicely, we can get them to play separately as well. Okay, once you're done with those, I see Zeke's doing the challenging one. I love it. That'll get some good heat going for you. Maybe you might start doing it on the knees like I did, and you do 5 a side, and then you're feeling pretty good, and then you challenge yourself with 5 more up off the knees. That's an awesome way to warm yourself up. And again, you don't have to be perfect if it's not painful. As long as you're working towards mental connection and perfection of how you're doing it and why you're doing it. It's just like when people try to lift too heavy, but they don't get full depth, then it's not worth doing. So as long as you're working towards doing it correctly, challenge yourself with it. You're not wrong by trying to make it harder or challenging yourself with mobility, because we don't do it enough. Okay, now that we're done with that one, shake out the wrists again, just because we spent some time on it. Okay. If you want to, at this point, this is where if I was doing this myself, but I feel like we've done enough of it together that we can move on to the next thing I want to do. But you could go through some actual bird dogs where you're doing opposite side cross pattern stuff. So just real quick, what those look like if you're doing this on your own time is you have the opposite foot, opposite leg lifting, and you're trying again so that if you look at it from my top to bottom of my trunk, it's staying level. I'm not tipping side to side. Right? I'm not going same-sided like Snuffleupagus. I'm not arching my low back. Everything stays nice and level. And after you do the warm-up like what we did, that should actually feel pretty easy to accomplish compared to if you do it at the very beginning. Okay, so that's something you could throw in now if you want. We're going to move past it for the purposes of the class and timing right now, but that's a really great one to go through a few sets of. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do some rotational mobility, and we're going to do some mobility through our hips. So we're going to start out doing rotational through the upper so that we get that rotation. Then we're going to sit into like an adductor stretch that also gets our QL muscle, which is our lower corners of the back. So those are the last two that we're going to finish up with, are those moves today, but they take some time and we're going to spend some time in them. So go ahead and come back on the feet. They don't have to be up like this. They can if you want, but they can be down, comfortable here. Okay. What we're going to do is, we've done this stuff before, is I want to put extra attention on the fact that I'm putting my elbow on the ground and I'm going kind of in between the width of my knees. I'm not towards one side. That cheats and allows me to open up through my back instead of through my upper back. I want it to be in the middle, and I want to have my hand planted down. Okay, this is going to allow me to push up and to really push up and activate the correct muscles instead of pushing through here and arching and using our shoulder to gain mobility. Okay, so putting it through here for today. Today's how we're doing it, but you guys can always change it if you have other ways. And then putting my other arm, hand in the small of the back. Okay, if you want to challenge yourself after we've done a few of these, you can move it up to the neck as long as you're not craning on the neck. I know for me that my shoulder lack of range of motion limits my ability to really challenge it. So I take my shoulder out of the mix. And I often have people start here. So you're going to go down, you're going to stretch across the back of your chest. So I'm trying to take this shoulder and push it towards that elbow, letting my neck relax. I should feel a good stretch depending on who you are, maybe mid-trap or low-trap. And then I'm going to try and push in through my elbows, push up to the sky, and look towards the ceiling, trying to open up as much as I can. Really trying to think about how much I open up. This is one that I love, that you can watch the difference between, say, Angie's ability to open up, my ability, and Zeke's. You can come forward a bit. The reason I don't like coming forward is, again, I get to cheat and use my hips and my low back. If I sit back on it, it allows me to take those things out of it and really force, even if I don't get very far, at least I know I'm using the muscles I want to target to open that up. So go ahead and do 5 of those. Really nice long stretch at the bottom, letting that shoulder drop, and then pushing through that elbow, pushing through the hand on the ground, opening up, trying to stretch that chest open and turn. If you need to and can only turn your head like I am right now facing the camera because it's craning your neck or it's creating a cramp, that's fine. Just pay attention to that. That's something that maybe you need to work through a little bit too if that's limiting you. Back down. And I'm really taking time to activate my muscles. I'm taking time to let it really stretch at the bottom and feel that mid-back. And I'm going to think about opening my chest up, pushing my chest long and tall while I twist. I think I have one more, so I'm going to do that now. I'm starting to sweat a bit because I'm sitting inside in a hot room, but I'm hoping Zeke's really enjoying doing this outside. Go ahead and switch sides when you're done. And again, if you'd wanted to switch to having your hand behind your neck, you can. I just don't like to crane on my neck when I know my shoulders don't have as good a mobility. So I'm going to stay this way so you guys can see what this side looks like from the other direction. So again, 5 per side, spending that time really pushing, trying to think about what muscles are activating and opening you up, and then really stretching it down. And really pushing in through the ground, noticing maybe where it's harder to stay open or where your body kind of turns or cheats a little one side versus the other. I know that I don't get nearly as open on this side. My elbow gets out to like a 90-degree angle, it feels like, instead of fully opening, but you're able to see, like if you're watching this, you could probably see Zeke is opening up pretty well and see him straight on and how much he's turning, which is great. You can see Angie from another angle. I'm gonna do one more. And then chest is high, shoulders tall. Okay. And I know I don't focus a lot of how we're breathing through these ones, but really thinking about taking those breaths and breathing into the tension and then letting it out. If that lets you increase a twist at all or anything, try and match that with a breath. That can help sometimes because we decrease the pressure. The last moves we're gonna do, we're gonna spend some time in, is we're gonna go down into this kind of a position. And then what we're gonna do once we get in that position is we're gonna make sure that we spend a little extra time really sitting up onto our sit bones. So sometimes you can even kind of rock forward. I literally put my hand under my gluteal fold, so under my butt, for lack of a better, less fancy term, and I pull up on that fatty tissue and I pull it out, and then I do the same thing on this side. So I really feel like it's rocked my pelvis bones a little bit more forward, right? So my sit bones. And then I'm bringing that foot into where it's comfortable, hanging out in this position. If you feel a little too much stretch on the back of the knee, you don't have to straighten it all the way out, right? It's okay if it's just hovering with a little bit of tension, that's fine. We're going more for what we're getting back here. You might get some here, but I care more about what you're getting in the back. So now that we're really up on the sit bones, first thing you're gonna do is we're always gonna think about keeping the chest tall and directional as we go through it. I'm not worried about how much you can collapse down closed up towards the floor. I'm not worried about that. First of all, you won't be able to see me even get towards the floor if I do that, right? That's not what I'm working on today. We're working on twisting and lengthening here. So I want you to think about your shoulders being tall, and even as you bend, that you're trying to bend them out and forward, not down and crunched. Okay, so that's a mindset you're in charge of because I can't control you on that. But up and forward, we're gonna turn. You're gonna feel a stop point pretty quick. You can use this hand if you want to either push away, or I like to grab on the other side and pull myself towards it. But notice as I pull, I'm pushing my shoulders and chest towards my foot. In doing that versus bending like this, and doing that, I feel that stretch more through that QL. If you're someone who can walk it out further and pull yourself in, that's fine. And it's okay that you're rounding some. Just think about really pushing that chest forward tilt, because we're trying to pull that lower spine forward. We're not just trying to arch and bend close to ourselves. We're trying to pull and kind of shift and shear through our pelvis and low back. So I'm really pulling everything down and in, and then I'm big chest, tall and through. And then I'm gonna breathe into it. And as I breathe out, I'm gonna really pull a little bit more. And again, you can have a bent knee if you need it. That's fine. If you don't have, you can be holding up by the knee if you can't reach the ankle, if you can't reach the feet. And then now that you've been in this position for a little bit, we're gonna take that arm up. And again, we're gonna go overhead, but we're going for height. Like we're reaching up towards the ceiling and over, not like I'm trying to curve down in a rainbow towards. So I'm reaching up and over, kind of like what I did with the lats at the beginning. So I'm up and over. Some of you might be able to fall to the side more, and that's fine, but I want that chest tall and through, up and over, and I'm reaching up towards the ceiling, towards the corner of the room, instead of falling towards the foot. This should allow you to feel a lot more through the actual QL muscles and spine here, and like you're actively moving yourself forward versus collapsing in a flexed spine. And then breathe. And every time you breathe, you might be able to reach a little harder or deepen it a little bit. You might be able to start mentally pushing that leg and knee away for the bent leg. You might be able to figure four leg, like bend it, push it into the carpet more mentally, push it away. I know I start getting more of a stretch from it. One more big breath, trying to sink in and push away in that very end breath. And then slowly come out of it, walk back to the middle first. So you're rocking your pelvis back in square. So I rock back to the middle and then I round up. And then I do that little mini disc pump again, kind of for that lower pelvis, just so I don't pull anything or grab on it. And then we're gonna switch sides. Careful not to aggravate hamstrings, adductors, that type of stuff. It's funny, I feel so bent all the time when I do it. And then I have Angie, who I watch in the screen, and her arms are so like poised and like bent correctly and long. And I'm like, my elbow is almost straight. So it's always very entertaining just to see the poise and grace with which Angie is such a strong badass. And I'm just a tight, crumpled, broken old sport player. But mobility helps all of us. That's the best part. And it's not about how pretty you look. It's about how you get to these certain positions. Okay, so now we're back on this other side. You might notice this other side doesn't go out as far, or you might have to bring it forward a little bit, and that's okay. But I still want you to remember that kind of rotational pull through the sit bones to really get yourself kind of up and rocked forward into your pelvis, getting your fatty tissue up and out of the way, right? Again, you might need to leave that front knee soft. That's fine. This is about up here. So now, reminder, shoulders are going forward and out as you aim. They'll still bend some, but I don't want it to be a crunch bend towards the ground. I want it to be a rock and lean so that we're getting some effect through the pelvis towards your foot. This arm, again, if you want to start with pulling away a little bit, that's fine. But otherwise, I like taking it because it assists me to pull on my leg and to push towards. So I'm really pulling myself in and through, playing around with it. Some of you might want to rotate yourself a little more. Up to you with what you feel on this side compared to the other one. Deep breaths in and thinking about chest going down and forward, not down straight to the ground in a crunch. I can feel it behind my knee on this side a little more than I did on the other side. So I'm actually going to hold a little bit higher and do more of my range of motion through pulling my arms down versus trying to straighten my leg more. So I don't want to strain a hamstring trying to stretch my back. Try to deepen that rotation if you can a little bit, and then deepen how much you're pushing yourself towards the front. So you're getting that bend through here. And then let's go ahead and take that arm up. And remember, we're going kind of up and out reaching. We're not worried about how much we can bend. We're going up and reaching out to get that lat, turning towards. Again, chest is still trying to face as much as it can. I can use this arm to keep pulling me in, rotating in and out of it as much as you want, whatever you feel. And then with each breath, every time you let it out, see if you can pull a little more into it, reach a little more over the head, push away with that other knee a little bit. If you can see kind of how I'm moving it, I push away, trying to elongate that position all along this. Please forgive the hairless cat from mewing in the background. He's had enough of mobility, apparently. Keep reaching, you guys. Keep reaching. I'm going to let him out so he leaves me alone. Go. Hold on for just a little bit longer, and then bring it back to the center. Again, I bring it around to the center first. I walk it up a little. I rock the pelvis forward and backward. And then I carefully bring my legs out or together. And I'm going to let you guys come out of that as slowly as you need to, depending on what's tight for you. At the end, sometimes I'll even feel pretty good after that, and I'll feel like I actually used my back. It'll almost feel like I did some back extensions because I was using it so much to activate in there. So stretch or roll through whatever you feel you need. I like to sit with my hip flexors kind of up and bent, and then I'll pull in and rock through. Some people might want to round their low back a little bit. That's fine. I just wouldn't stay in any one position for too long. I always like to add some movement, but do whatever you would want right here in this next part. Sometimes I'll go through some shin box position rotations where I put my feet in that shin box position. I'll even come up to it a little to stretch through the last little bit. You guys play for a little bit. I'm giving you that time now. because this is when I would normally do that. And again, I'll go through some rotations a little while I'm doing it. And then I come up a little bit. Some people really like to come up to the top of that shin box and stretch it out. That can be a good one too. Whatever you feel. All right, how are we feeling? Two of you that are on screen. Anything else that you would be curious or interested to stretch, or something you noticed that was tight, that while we're recording, if people had those same questions, if you had them, you can throw them out at me for the recording. Otherwise, I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, my back feels like it did a whole mess of back extensions after that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Oh.
It's like, oh, I didn't realize how many little tiny muscles
Oh, yeah.
to activate each of those positions. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I didn't even use weight. It's just your body and your positions that you realize how much your spine is involved in doing all of those things. How does it feel?
Awesome.
Side to side? Did you feel like one side was like way different, or like lat versus QL on one side or the other, or did you feel pretty balanced overall?
The lats were okay. It was just like getting the back to stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
That was what I felt most. Like, it didn't hurt. It was just a good stretch.
Good stretch. Good. Love it. How about you, Angie?
Oh, I feel a lot through my right side, because that's the side that's always really tight. So like,
yeah, and your hip and stuff too, right? Yeah, isn't that strange? And you're just like, I know it's tight, but man, is it really that much worse than the other side?
The left side feels great, and the right side is like, what did you do?
Yeah. Well, good. It's good that we do some of these things sometimes, because it just brings attention to our body, our like mental connection to something, that certain things are sitting in a tighter capacity. And sometimes that in itself will help it loosen a little bit throughout the day, because the nervous system will say, hey, maybe we don't need to be holding on so dang tight right now. We didn't realize that we were just sitting in this chronic state. So one could hope that, not only physically stretched those things, but that it also maybe brought some connection mentally to it. So cool. Any other questions or things you noticed that you think people on the video might also have, or that you're concerned with, or do you guys feel pretty good with it today?
Felt pretty good.
Feeling good.
Good. If you guys are ever doing, anyone on the recording or you guys on here right now, if you guys are ever doing like back type of mobility and things like that, notice we didn't have to go to a full end range of anything in order to really stretch it, right? We played in that mid range of where our muscle tension let us go. And then even like Zeke said, like, you feel afterwards, we didn't do that much, and we moved around a little bit through nice slow movements through the full spine, and it already felt like it had done a lot of work. So it doesn't take a lot to tax our spine and to move it around, because it's used in a lot of our movements. So just be mindful when you're doing low back, upper back, all that stuff. You don't need to do it to the full extreme, and you don't need to do it for hours to get a lot of benefit out of it, because it gets pretty tired pretty quick. So it was good to see you guys today. Go enjoy the sunshine, and anyone later recordings, hopefully you find this helpful.
Awesome. Thank you.